I had two older boys, then my twins who passed away. And then I had a daughter almost a year after, pretty soon after my loss. Um, and of course I got busy right into, raising all these kids and just put my grief to the side because I was busy. I had to be thankful for what I had, and I was. But the day she got on the school bus, I had a bad time. And that's when I knew I needed a therapist and I needed some help.
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
Hello, welcome back to You Need a Counselor podcast. This is episode 123. I'm Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions. We're a strength-based counseling agency here in Iowa. We're still offering telehealth anywhere in the state and in any of our 6 office locations.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am Vice President at Heart and Solutions in charge of our BHIS department. So BHIS stands for Behavioral Health Intervention Services, and that is our program where we go in-home and work with children and their families ages 4 through 18 on different behavioral skills. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
So our guest today joins us from New York State. Jennifer Senn is a certified life coach. She specializes in grief counseling for parents of stillborn babies. She is the founder of Navigating Baby Loss. She offers her services to anybody in the world. She can do virtual sessions worldwide. So we are very, very glad to have her here. Welcome, Jennifer. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
So tell us a little bit about your company, Navigating Baby Loss. What services are you providing to those parents?
Yes, and I call it Navigating Baby Loss because in my experience, it is a lifelong thing to have these reminders and all of the things that come along the years that you are missing out when you can't raise your child, when your child is no longer with you. So I help people through group programs, one-on-one coaching, and just really finding different ways I have my own podcast called Navigating Baby Loss, and just different ways to help people get the support that they need through this time.
Good. How did you get started then? Where did this idea for creating this company come from?
Several years ago, I was in a business retreat. And we sat down and they said, okay, we're going to do vision boards. And I had a complete blank out. I could not do it. And they had a coach there who kind of worked with me through it. And what I realized at that time was I was not living my life into the future. I was going day to day because of this pain of losing these babies. And then I also did have a child after that, but I was so cautious of living my life and dreaming of things that might not come true. So that was really when I decided, if I feel this way 10 years down the road, certainly other people must feel this way too, and are living their lives very, very small and very cautiously because of this experience, this disappointing experience in life. So that's when I started to just reach out and create the help that I know people need.
Wow. Wow. What a beautiful story that you took this experience that you had. You took your pregnancy and the stillbirth of your twin daughters, and 10 years later transformed that into a channel to help other parents who are experiencing similar loss. And as you were 10 years from that time, from their birth, you were in a place of experience, because it wasn't just the loss of your daughters, it was every single year of that 10 years. And so being at least 10 years ahead of some of the parents that you work with really does give you such valuable life experience to be able to help and understand those parents. And I love that in your description of navigating baby loss, you describe this as you work with parents of stillborn babies. And people don't always think about people who have lost children, if that was their only child, as parents. And there can be such a feeling of, well, but I am a parent, but I don't feel like I fit in, right? I'm not doing soccer practice and I'm not doing birthday parties. But at the same time, the community of parents that I would otherwise be tapped into, there's this feeling of, maybe not belonging in that group. So I love that you're doing that, even just in your description of your services, that, oh, you are still a parent, even if other people don't understand that.
Thank you. Yes. And I really wanted to include parents, because I think so many times the men get left out because it's happening to the women physically, and they're the ones that are kind of holding everything together, trying to be the support, but also grieving in a maybe even more silent way, if that's possible, because this is a very silent grief. We're told since we're young that these things happen and you just move past it. It happens to a lot of women, it's common, but it's not. It's still very devastating when it happens to you.
And you mentioned that you do groups as well as individual coaching. What are some of the things you work on in your groups then?
So I'm actually starting a monthly series where I'm going to pick a topic that I know is really a hot topic, and we're going to dive in on that once a month. Just for anyone who would like to experience coaching, connect with other parents who are lost parents. And we tackle topics such as, relationship issues or the guilt that you're feeling. Sometimes forgiving your body is a big one. And just, milestones is another one, ways to honor your baby. So there's so many different topics that we just take a little bit deeper dive in the group programs and connect. Really, the importance is connecting with other families too.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, we hear as a society, we hear, oh, this happens a lot, but we don't see it. We don't feel that we're part of this group of other individuals in our day-to-day lives. It's something that maybe our immediate family knows about if it was early in the pregnancy, and other people just don't know. And we don't, we probably know other people that we don't know their story. And so I love that you're bringing people together so that they can know that, no, we're not alone in that experience. I love what you're talking about in terms of milestones. And you had mentioned, the grief of that continued grief and complex grief of missing out on those events and those celebrations in life. So tell me a little bit more about those milestones.
Yeah, I think kind of to back up, I think that was my first experience of getting a counselor and seeing a therapist was when I had my twins, and then I had two older boys, then my twins who passed away, and then I had a daughter almost a year after, pretty soon after my loss. Um, and of course I got busy right into, raising all these kids, and just put my grief to the side because I was busy. I had to be thankful for what I had, and I was. But the day she got on the school bus, I had a bad time. And that's when I knew I needed a therapist, and I needed some help, because I had all of these fears started coming forward and all of that. And then I didn't realize till probably 5 years later that it was affecting my future. But at that point in time, I just really had so much fear. So that's when I realized, okay, this grief doesn't go away. It's not going away. And just because, here's my baby getting on the school bus, well, I should have. You always think of the age that your lost children would have been.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then that followed right through for graduation and, college and all of the things that you really miss out on because you don't have these children that you thought you were going to have.
Mm-hmm. What was that experience like for you trying to find your own counselor then?
It was pretty easy. It was pretty easy. I live in a small area, and my doctor recommended this counselor. She came highly recommended, so it was a pretty easy onboarding, I would say, for that. She was really great and highly qualified for for the parenting counseling that I was needing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it sounds like you had that moment and you had been so busy, and then your daughter got on the school bus and you were like, oh no, here it all is. And it's been here this whole time, but now all my kids are in school and I got the next 6 hours to, be with this. And it happens like that so quickly sometimes, where if we are busy like that, it just gets where it just continues to be there, but we don't recognize it on a day-to-day business because we can't. We don't have
Yeah,
we don't
and
have
I
the
think,
space.
yeah, there was so much shame around it too, because I remember telling my husband even, like, I'm gonna need help with this. I think this is from the twins. And he was like, what? Like, oh, aren't like kind of, aren't you over that sort of a feeling? And I think people who don't understand it firsthand probably do think that, right? Like, oh my gosh, that was years ago. What are you worrying about that now for? You have this beautiful family. And so there's some shame around that too. Like, is there something wrong with me that I'm still feeling this way after all this time? And that's the stuff that I want to get out in the open. That's the stuff I think is so important, is that silent shame, that silent isolation and guilt even about having these feelings.
Yes, and you talked too about the unique challenge of having another child after the
Mm.
loss, and that feeling of, well, am I allowed to grieve my twins? If I do that, does it mean that I'm not grateful for my daughter that just got on the bus? Does it mean that
Mhm.
I am valuing her less and I don't appreciate that I've got her and my boys, and we've got a great family and things should be great? And if I don't feel that way all the time, is that something wrong with me? Am I allowed to still feel grief and still feel sadness about my family, even, and have all these other things be wonderful?
Right.
And I think that is such a, when you called it shame, you're exactly right. There's that shame feeling of, well, I should feel this way. I should be grateful for, my three healthy, wonderful children, and I should be all of these things. and that I should be over it feeling,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And there's so much shame with that. So I love that you've got the podcast, you're telling people like that is, yes, you can feel that way. You can feel both things.
And you should feel that, really. I mean, it's in you. It would be strange if you didn't feel some of those things, but it's such a hard thing to admit to yourself, certainly to admit to anyone else, because we're just so conditioned to look at you like, well, but look at all the great things that you do have, and aren't you thankful, and you should be so glad. And I think when people can't, because many people never met the twins, right? And when people can't see the person who is gone, it's like it is just a figment of your imagination almost. You're meant to feel that, you're led to feel that a little bit, and that really messes with your confidence.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
because as women, we have a relationship with that child
Yeah.
before that child is born.
From the first minute.
Yes,
Yeah.
from the first, I mean, and I can think back to, like even before I was pregnant, like I had a relationship then, and it changed when I found out I was pregnant, and then it changed, throughout the course. And so
Sure.
that relationship is there for the parents,
Yeah.
that, yeah, grandparents and aunts and uncles, and their relationship with that child doesn't start until they're born and they've got the hospital and all of
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
And so they're grieving a different relationship than we are as the parent, because I mean, 9 months is a long time to spend with somebody, and or even 1 month is a long time to spend with somebody in that kind of intimate relationship.
Mhm.
It is one of the most intimate relationships you're ever going to have, right? Your partner doesn't live
Yeah.
inside your body and share your blood with you, right? So you're all, that is such an intimate relationship,
Mhm.
and there's a biological component to that loss as well. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the the strangest thing to me, my twins were lost at 32 weeks. And I was shocked that my body then produced milk after, like, wow, like what a slap in the face, right? That you've got this to deal with. And there's I had to have a C-section, so then you have that kind of healing. And so there are all of these hormonal things that go on. And as you have that connection with this baby, and just because they're not alive earthside does not mean that connection is gone. It's very, very much with you. And I know that there's a meme, or some sort of photo going around that really does say that you share your blood supply with your babies, whether they are alive or not, they still circulate in you for years and years after, which is very comforting to the mothers in my community. But yeah, there's definitely such a connection. And I remember that was probably one of the worst things that someone said to me after I had my loss was, well, at least you didn't get too attached to them. And I thought, I could not have been any more attached to them. That is the craziest thing that anyone has ever said. But
Literally attached.
yeah,
Yeah.
quite attached. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, well,
Mhm.
and you told us you have a quiz too, where parents can take it to see what stage of grief they're at. Can you kind of go into what those different stages of grief are?
I do. I mean, I really I mean, we all know the stages of grief, right? But I really see it in terms of stages after your loss, of that immediate grouping, where you just feel like you can't breathe. You don't know how your life is ever going to be okay again. Your life, nothing makes sense. So, there's that initial stage. And then there's the stage where I think most people fall. It's called the silent sufferer. So those are the people that are just, like I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to pretend that everything's okay. And I'm just going to put my life back together and continue on and be grateful for what I have. And meanwhile, you've got this brewing underneath you, this, this grief and this, where I walked into a bathroom one time and I saw a woman with twin girls that would have been the same age as mine. And I burst out crying. Like that's that kind of unprocessed brewing grief. And then you have the third group of I call them hopeful healers. They're the ones that are starting to see like, okay, this is never going to be okay in my mind, but I do see where I've grown as a person, or there are some beautiful gifts that have come out of this experience for me. So yes, so I do have a quiz that kind of groups you according to where you are in those stages and gives you some really amazing podcast resources or different blog posts I've written and all kinds of different helpful things that will help you move forward on your journey.
Wow. And one phrase that you used that that really stood out to me is you talked about forgiving your body. And when you talked about how, your body still produced milk and your body still went through these different things, and that can feel like such a betrayal of your body, right? And it's another person that we're saying, why don't you understand, right? And so, how do we forgive our bodies? What does that look like?
That's a tough one. That is a hard one. That one took me the longest, probably. Because you get very disconnected from your body when something like this happens. You don't recognize it at all. In the blink of an eye, you feel like it has betrayed you. How could your body, you have one job, right? You have one thing as a woman. From the time you're a little girl, everybody tells you you're going to have a baby someday. And your body could not even do this one thing it was really designed to do. So, there are a lot of, it really just comes down to a lot of thought work, thinking about is your body responsible? Like in what ways could your body have been responsible for it? And it's usually you can come up with nothing, usually you there's not a lot of reasons that your body did this. And you just start working through and just getting reconnected with your body, like getting back to, taking walks, maybe yoga, just different things that are healing and eating right. I know it sounds really basic and all the things that to be true, but those really are the things. It's just getting back into that self-care. And because I think it can be very, very easy to just stay disconnected and angry almost with your body.
Well, and you mentioned too that you had your daughter pretty shortly after the twins too, like a year later. So is that scary and hard, being able to trust your body again through that experience shortly after?
It was the worst. And in fact, I have a whole coaching program just for that, because it's an experience in itself, just to think about going back in. I knew for me it had to be pretty quick or never at all. And so that I knew that was either or for me. And yeah, it was very scary because you get so many flashbacks and so many worries. I had a wonderful relationship with my doctor. That's one thing I encourage for anyone who's pregnant after loss, is just having that relationship with your doctor where they were able to say, if you need to at any time, come on in, we'll take a look, or we'll listen for a heartbeat, or whatever it is that you need to ease your mind. And I didn't do it too often, but a couple times really got me through. And they were, of course, wonderful because they were there through the loss, the same doctors. And so we all celebrated when she was born. We all celebrated together for sure. But it's not easy. It's a tough time. There's a lot of talking yourself through that too. That this is a different baby, this is a different pregnancy, this is a different time. Here's all the things that are different and going right, and you just have to go with those throughout.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds like a time that a group situation would be so helpful, or having that one-on-one with you, to be able to have those reminders of, this is a new situation, this is a different time, because you're likely in the same house, you're sleeping in the same bed, you're eating breakfast in the same place. There's just all of these things that are similar, and so being able to have that reminder from somebody else who understands that this is different, right? This is a different situation. And it sounds like also a good time for a totem of some sort. So sometimes people will do, like have a ring or a necklace or something that is symbolic for them of the children or child that they lost, and have it on them at all times so that they can remember. We can touch our ring and say, okay, nope, I'm back to where I am now. When we have those kind of flashbacks, right, it brings us back to the present, and we go, okay, nope, they're with me, and this baby's with me at the same time, and being able to bring us back to that time when that is true, and my boys are with me at the same time, right? Like it's all true at the same time.
Yeah. And I think another layer to my story too is that my parents, their first child also died at birth. So I grew up knowing about this, knowing about the death of what would have been my oldest sister, the oldest child that I now became. And so I think that also came up a lot for me when I was pregnant about, but I wouldn't have this baby if the twins had lived. Right. So, and in my daughter's life, like there's so many times where I thought, oh gosh, I can't live without her. And if she wasn't, if I wouldn't have her, if the twins lived, I wouldn't have had that other child probably. So those are the things that kind of just brew up. And I also am a big believer that things work in life the way that they're supposed to. Whether we like it or not. It's not always pretty to get there, but there are things that work out the way that they're supposed to. So holding on to that.
So what are some things that people, I know you mentioned one comment that somebody said that was not helpful towards you, but what are some things that people said or that you recommend people say if we have people in our life who lose a baby to stillborn as well, that either we should not say are not helpful or that are helpful as well?
Yes. Okay. So the things that some people said that you also should not say are anything that begins with at least, right? At least you can get pregnant. At least you have your two boys. At least, it wasn't very far long. Like, who knows? There's always, if you start to say something that's at least, it means that you're minimizing someone's grief, and that feels awful. It feels awful. What I tell people that they should say are things like, I'm sorry that you have to go through this. There's nothing that you can say that's going to make someone else's pain feel better. There's never going to be the right thing to say. So it's better to just really keep it simple. I hate that you're going through this. I'm sorry you're in pain. And then I tell people too, it's so amazing if you can text someone, just send them a text, especially if you knew the baby's name. hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm thinking about you and the baby today. That's it. That's it. Just really keeping it simple, not trying to come up with some amazing phrase that's going to make them feel better, because you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It's with loss of another person, saying that person's name is
Mhm.
so important.
It is.
And a lot of times we avoid that. And a lot of times with infant loss or child loss at any stage, there is a feeling, for the parent of, well, this child was a month old, or was only a month developed, and should I name that child, right? And because sometimes that's painful to do, because it makes it feel, it shows, or it lets us feel how real it is,
Yeah.
when we say no, this, when we say a child versus we say a name. But it is so important that as supporters, that if that child had a name, that we name that child. um
I think so. Yeah.
yeah.
I think that as a lost parent, that is your biggest fear, is that people will forget the baby. And so if there are, on the rare occasions that someone does remember it, it means so much. It means everything. So yeah, if you know, and that's why I always tell everybody, even if it's been 10 years, send them a text today and let them know that you are thinking about them and their baby. And I think the newer moms now that are having losses are they're a little more willing to name their babies than maybe, you know, I mean, I did, because mine were further along, but even an earlier miscarriage, they're a little more willing to name them. And I like that. I think that's helpful.
Absolutely. I think it's great. And even having funerals and services that involves the rest of the family, when there's a child that's miscarried, it can be, not, it's not for everybody. Not everybody finds
Yeah.
that helpful or supportive, but for people who do, that can be so important.
Well, I think that's a great point. And that kind of goes back to the previous question too, about what people say, because you might have people in your family, some of the older people in your family too, that might say, like, what do you mean you're having a memorial celebration? Like, are you, you just need to move on and just go on with your life. And those are the things you need to just put to the side. If that's what feels good to you, then do it, because it will be important to you, and they can come or not. But I bet it's comforting. Your people that love you want to see you comforted. And so lots of times they either say the wrong things, or they don't say anything at all for fear that it's going to make you upset, right? And so I think doing something like that is a little reminder that, hey, I'm going to celebrate this. This does not make me more upset. I'm never going to not know that my baby's died, right? Like, but by celebrating it, it's just as a little more validation and comfort.
Absolutely. And I love the idea of sending a text, with the baby's name, and saying, on those milestones, that, for for your sons and your daughter, you probably get texts and phone calls on their birthdays. But for the twins, that can feel so. What were your twins' names? Did they have names?
Yep, Paige and Mackenzie.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So for Paige
Yeah.
and Mackenzie's birthdays, I mean, it
Yeah.
could feel very isolating to be celebrating that alone.
Yeah, you feel, and right. And as the parent, you feel like you're the one that needs to keep that memory alive. You're the one that needs to say, hey, remember to, this is the date. And it's just, yeah, it means everything if someone else remembers it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful advice. And those ceremonies, and I've seen people, I think that one of the challenges, and you mentioned, maybe older people or older generations that maybe
Mm.
didn't have those ceremonies. A lot of time there's grief that might be 60 years old, 70 years old, and busying and not having those celebrations or memorials at the time. And then coming to, your granddaughter then loses a child and they have a memorial and you're invited, that can bring up so much. That might be 70 years of grief and unprocessed loss that might then come up as anger, right? Or might come up as, well, that's ridiculous, right? We didn't do that stuff. And so I think that it's really kind of changing, right? Because the people who are doing that now and embracing the community around them and allowing other people to support them, then, as that happens for their children and their children's children and the next generations, they're going to be able to be that support person without bringing their own unresolved grief into the situation.
That's a great point. I hadn't really thought about that too much because, yeah, what would happen if they were able to share their story after because we all know as mental health care professionals, that grief lives in you.
Yeah.
You don't get rid of it. It lives in you. It's just how you manage it and how you think about it. But yeah, so then you've got these women that have experienced this so many years ago that have just been brewing it all of these years. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So just being able
So
to,
much.
and not that we have to take on their stuff, but if it's helpful to the relationship to be able to
Yeah,
understand why people might have that reaction, then we can, it makes it less personal and hurtful
yes,
to us when they
right.
respond in that way, which is the main thing. And I've seen people taking photos also, doing stillbirth
Mhm.
photography and newborn photos. And I just think it's beautiful. And this, it's maybe been 10 years, maybe 15, and where we really started to see that
Yeah.
happening fairly recently. And is that something that the parents that you work with find helpful and useful?
Oh, so much so because that's all you have left.
Mhm.
That's it. You have nothing else except that. And I know that is a big deal for a lot of my clients. They will create a little space in the corner of their living room and display these photos. And then they get their mother-in-law that comes in and is like, "What are you doing? Put those away. That's terrible. No one wants to see that." So yeah, like integrating this part of your life and this part of your story into your home and into your family is really important, but it can ask for some judgment maybe. So, but I think it's important to do that if that's what you feel comfortable. And some people don't. Some people are like, I have them, they're tucked away in a nice place and that I can go there when I need to. But so it is very, very individual for sure.
And so then you have a free ebook as well, 10
Mhm.
questions you ask yourself when you lose your baby. Can you give us a
Mhm.
little sneak peek about what that is about?
Yeah, that's really designed more for right after your loss. I thought back to like your mind goes crazy, right? Whenever you have a crisis or anything going on, pretty much every day, it goes crazy with all these thoughts, trying to make sense of what happened because within a minute, your whole life can change. So I went through and I wrote down the 10 things that really were most on my mind that I wish I knew as soon as I had experienced my loss that I wish someone had told me. And so I created an ebook of those 10 things that just kept coming up and how I thought about them and have tried to make some sense of them since. Things that I think people should know. because no one really wants. No one Googles while you're pregnant, what will happen if I lose my baby, right? Like no one's Googling that. It's in those minutes afterwards where you're like, I need help and I don't know where to find it. So
Absolutely. And being able to kind of break it down into those questions of, to be able to help kind of direct our thoughts a little bit and kind of understand what we're thinking and what's happening to us is sounds like a really great kind of grounding measure for people too, to be able to have something to do to work towards feeling a little bit more grounded because nobody's prepared. I mean, you just don't, there isn't a way to prepare, and people don't talk about it at your baby shower, right? They don't at your baby shower, they're talking about
all the story, the
changing
labor.
and like diaper changing, then feeding, then potty training and all of that stuff. And so we get a ton of that. But we don't get this information until we're in it.
Yeah. Which is good. I mean, no one wants to think that this is going to happen, but it's when it happens, you feel very like a lot of these thoughts that you're having is it crazy? Am I crazy? Why am I thinking these things? What is happening? And I just really wanted people to know that they're not alone if they're thinking these same things, which I'm pretty sure they are from the many people I've worked with. We all kind of have those same thoughts going through our heads. So just knowing that it's normal and and that you're not alone to think these when you experience this tragedy.
So if you could give a suggestion to somebody on the fence about starting counseling, what would that be?
Oh my goodness. Yes. The sooner the better. The sooner the better. Don't suffer. Don't think it's something that you just have to make your way through and that you just have to live through it, because you probably have people telling you how common it is and that it's normal and it happens to all women and there's always a risk anytime you get pregnant that you'll lose it. It still is devastating. It still was a life that you were creating. And it's as important as if you lost your 70-year-old grandfather. It's just as much of a loss in your life. So yes, I think it's never too late. It's never too late.
Yeah.
Even if it's been 10 years, 20 years. I had a lady one time, it was 30 years. And she was, she had some worries about the future. And yeah, it's always with you. So it's never too late.
I love that. Yeah, it's never too late. And that shame voice that's saying, gosh, it's been 10 years, it's been 30 years, that voice does not need to be there, does not need to be listened to. It is not too late, and that grief is still there. And we can work with that grief at any time in the process.
Yeah.
I also think you set such a great example when you talked about your primary care doctor, because you had that relationship established with that primary care doctor, and that was so helpful in your pregnancy with your daughter. And so the same really is true for counseling. If we start a counseling relationship before something happens, then when we're in that, we've got that counseling relationship built, and now we can work on and process and think about and talk about the thing that is happening now, instead of trying to build that relationship through it. So excellent words of wisdom here, and we really, really appreciate you being here, Jennifer. This is wonderful information.
Thank you. I appreciate what you do and the message that you are spreading and your commitment to it too. It's really important.
Thank you. So if you are looking for support group, or you're looking for individual one-on-one counseling anywhere in the world, you can go to Jennifer Senn, Jennifer, and then SENN.com. And you can find on there the ebook, you can find the quiz on there, and then you can also listen to the podcast. So check out the podcast, Navigating Baby Loss, with Jennifer, and I'll give you a lot more information and connection to these other resources as well. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for being here, for sharing your story, for telling us about Paige and Mackenzie and all of the people that you have been helping through this journey of life. We appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved this conversation. And my name is Jennifer Senn, and I need a counselor.
Awesome.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you're here. Now, we want to hear from you. Text us or give us a call at 515-650-3231. You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 800-531-4236. And if you're a provider seeking play therapy CEUs, you can find us on patreon.com/youneedatraining. We'll see you for the next episode, Sunday at 5.